I still remember the sound the gravel made under my boots that night. A thin, crisp crunch that echoed a little too loudly in the dark fields outside Pamplona. The body lay about 10 meters ahead, the reflective stripe on the paramedic's jacket blinking like a dying firefly every time he moved. And off to the right, half hidden behind the trunk of a Renault Megane, stood the car owner, arms crossed, eyes locked on the scene, face blank in a way that didn't match the situation. Most people at a hit and run look confused, rattled, angry, guilty something. This man looked prepared, like he'd run the scene through his head before stepping into it. The headlights from our patrol car washed over the smashed bicycle frame, bent like a broken rib cage. The victim's backpack was torn open, papers scattered across the asphalt. The air smelled faintly of coolant and wet soil. I crouched down, tracing the edge of a plastic fragment with my glove. Embedded in the dust was half a license plate, number enough to match the abandoned vehicle we'd found a few meters away. A clean match, too clean. I stood and glanced at the car owner again. He didn't blink, didn't ask questions, didn't even look away when they zipped the victim into the bag. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. And I wish I had been wrong, because everything that followed made this case one of the strangest I've handled in 30 years with the Guardia Civil. I'm Inspector Joaquin Arraiz, 53 years old, and I've worked traffic fatalities, homicides, missing persons, and every kind of family disaster you can imagine in Navarra. I'm not easily surprised, but that night on that quiet rural stretch outside Pamplona, the pieces didn't fit from the very beginning. The victim was Ander Uriz, 41, a local school teacher. No criminal record, no enemies we knew of. He was cycling home after a late tutoring session, something he did 3 nights a week. Routine. Predictable. The suspect, at least the only person tied to the vehicle, was Samuel Labiano, 37, an office worker from Berlada. He was the registered owner of the blue Renault Megane that left half its bumper on the road. He'd already filed a theft report for the car 3 days earlier. A vague one. No details about where he last parked it. No explanation for why he waited hours before calling it in. I've seen stolen car reports written by drunks that looked more convincing. We found his car abandoned 50 meters from the body, keys still in the ignition, airbag deployed. If you believe in coincidences, maybe that's just a coincidence. I stopped believing in those around the time smartphones started telling us where everyone had actually been. As the forensic team worked, my partner Torres waved me over. GPS data just came in, he said. On the Renault? He nodded. Yeah. Inspector, the car's been moving every day this week. I didn't say anything. Didn't have to. Didn't have bahua. If the car wasn't stolen, then Samuel's entire story collapsed right there on the wind-blown asphalt. Still, protocol meant we had to treat it as a possible theft until we finished the interviews. And that brought us back to the suspect standing behind the tape hands neatly folded, watching the scene with the posture of a man waiting for a bus. I walked over. Senor Labiano, I said, you showed up here quickly. I followed the patrol car, he replied, emotionless. I knew it was about my car. You sure you want to see all this? He shrugged. It's my car. Not one question about the victim. Not even a forced, is he okay? I've seen people try to act innocent before. Most overdo it. Samuel wasn't overacting. He wasn't acting at all, and that bothered me more. He repeated the same story he'd given in the theft report. I left the car parked near my building. When I came down the next morning, it was gone. I didn't see who took it. Routine answers. Too routine. An officer approached with a tablet. Inspector, there's something else on the GPS logs. I took it. The map was unmistakable. The Renault had passed the victim's street twice on the day before the hit and run. Slowly, almost crawling. "Interesting," I murmured. Samuel didn't react, didn't lean in, didn't ask what we found. Another red flag. Most cases have at least one small detail that rattles around your brain from the start. In this one, it was the silence. Not the silence of the night or the fields. Navarra has that quiet in its bones. But the silence in Samuel's face, the absence of confusion or fear. People freeze. People panic. But people don't rehearse fate unless they're expecting it. We loaded the body into the van. The last thing the paramedics said before closing the doors was, "Poor guy. Looks like he never saw it coming." I wasn't so sure, and when the GPS map refreshed with the car's movements from earlier that same evening, I felt the first real chill of the case. The Renault had been on the same road as the victim, only minutes before impact. That was the moment I stopped treating this as a routine hit and run. Something else was buried underneath the broken bicycle and the quiet asphalt, and it was about to get much stranger. The next morning, after a few hours of sleep that felt more like a long blink, I headed to the comisaria in Pamplona. Gray sky, cold air, the kind that makes your bones ache a little more when you're over 50. I've solved cases in worse conditions, but something about this one already felt heavier than it should. We brought Samuel Labiano in for a formal interview. Not an arrest yet, but I asked for a quiet room without a mirror and without interruptions. Sometimes silence tells you more than any lawyer. He sat with perfect posture, hands folded, eyes calm, too calm. "Let's start again, Samuel," I said, voice steady. "Walk me through the theft." He repeated the same script he'd given the patrol officer, same pauses, same order. That's when I started timing his breathing, an old habit. People lie with their mouths, not with their lungs. When he finished, I slid the tablet with the GPS logs in front of him. "Your car wasn't stolen," I said. "It's been moving normally all week. Even stopped near the victim's neighborhood yesterday." He stared at the screen. No panic, no defiance. Just a calculation behind his eyes, like he was adjusting to new information rather than being caught. "My friend must have taken it," he said finally. Torres raised an eyebrow. I didn't react. "Your friend?" "Yes. He borrows it sometimes. What's his name?" A beat. Too long. "Julian." "Julian what?" Another beat. "Just Julian." I leaned back. "You shared a car with someone you can't fully name?" "We met online," he said. "He needed help and we became friends. People sometimes invent imaginary friends. Children mostly. Adults? Only when they're very lonely or hiding something." "Give me his number," I said. He recited one from memory. Too clean. No hesitations. That's not how people recall phone numbers. I slid the recorder closer. "And you're saying this, Julian? Had the car the night Ander was killed?" "I think so," he said. "I didn't see him. Not, I'm sure." "Not," he confessed. Just the most neutral answer possible. He wasn't trying to avoid guilt. He was trying to avoid a specific version of guilt. We released Samuel for the moment and moved to the digital unit downstairs. Young officers, fast fingers, too much coffee. They ran the number through databases. Nothing. Not even a prepaid registration, like it didn't exist. I asked them to check the so-called Julian social media account Samuel had mentioned in his earlier statement. 2 accounts, one Instagram, one Telegram, both created within the last few months. Almost no posts, generic landscapes, no selfies, no voice messages. A ghost. Torres leaned toward me. "Inspector, what if this is just a debt problem? Maybe Samuel owed some guy money and he's covering for him." A reasonable theory. A comfortable one. But comfort isn't truth. "We'll see," I said. Next stop, The victim's workplace, the school where Ander taught. A modest building, chalk dust in the air, a mix of tired teachers and loud teenagers. His co-workers described him the way small towns describe their dead kind, helpful, the sort of man who stayed after hours to help failing students. But one detail stood out. He'd been nervous recently, said a colleague named Mate. Checking his phone all the time. He even canceled a hiking trip because he said he had something personal to resolve. Did he mention receiving threats? I asked. She hesitated. No. But last week he asked me if I knew how to track a hidden number. I thought he was helping a student. Hidden number. Interesting. Back in the car, Torres looked at me. So the teacher's worried. The car owner's lying. And the friend doesn't exist. Or exists only in the mind of one person, I muttered. We met the victim's family that afternoon, emotionally heavy as always. Ander's brother, Iñaki, shook my hand with trembling fingers. He wasn't himself the last 2 weeks, he said. He told me someone had been contacting him anonymously, asking for money. Extortion? I asked. Maybe. He wouldn't tell me details. He hated asking for help. That tracked with everything else. Pride is a powerful silencer. Did he ever mention the name Samuel Labiano? Iñaki shook his head. Before leaving, he added something that stuck with me. Ander said he felt watched. I told him he was overthinking. I wish I hadn't. I wrote the phrase in my notebook. People don't say they feel watched unless the watcher wants them to know. The CCTV footage from the victim's neighborhood arrived around 7 p.m. Grainy, but good enough. The Renault Megane passed his building twice the day before the hit and run. Slow, deliberate. Samuel had denied ever being there. I caught myself running my fingers along my temple, a habit when irritation creeps in. The contradiction wasn't surprising. What was surprising was how badly Samuel pretended to forget it. He wasn't covering a detail. He was covering a pattern. We traced the IP address linked to the online accounts of this mysterious hooligan. Same result every time. The connections originated from Samuel's own apartment or the cafe below it. Torres let out a low whistle. So he catfished himself. It's not catfishing, I said. It's identity construction, a persona, a mask. For what purpose? Blackmail? Emotional support? Guilt transfer? When people invent identities online, they usually want affection or escape. But building one capable of holding conversations, sending messages, even coordinating car usage that required planning, commitment, precision. Samuel didn't strike me as stupid. That was the problem. We returned to Samuel's building that night. I wanted to see his environment, the geography of his lies. Empty hallway, clean apartment, sparse decorations. A computer desk with 2 monitors, an external drive, and a locked drawer. I asked for the key. He said he'd lost it. I told him we'd come back with a warrant. As we left, Torres whispered, "You think he's mentally unstable?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe he's perfectly sane and wants us to think otherwise. Some criminals hide behind rage, some behind incompetence. But the clever ones? They hide behind confusion, yours, not theirs." Before midnight, we got a new report. Ander's apartment had been ransacked. No sign of forced entry. Drawers open, laptop missing. I felt something tighten in the center of my chest. Not fear focus. If someone broke in after the murder, Torres said, they were looking for something. Or I said they didn't find it during the first search. The first search? I nodded, staring at the wires hanging from the empty desk where Ander's laptop should have been. Yeah, I said. The one Ander never had time to report. A case that started as a simple hit and run had just turned into something else. And for the first time in days, I felt the real weight of the puzzle settling into place. A man was dead. Another man was lying. and somewhere between them was a friend who wasn't a friend at all. That was the night I realized the driver we were chasing might not exist. But the killer definitely did, and he was just getting started. By the next morning, the case had already begun to rot from the inside. Not from evidence, those pieces were falling into place, but from the pressure that starts when people with badges decide a case should be simple, and this one refused to behave. My jefe, Commander Ruiz, called me into his office. He didn't offer coffee. That's how I knew it wouldn't be a friendly talk. "Inspector Ariz," he said, hands clasped behind his back, "I've reviewed your notes. You're spending too much time digging into the suspect's psychological condition." "That's where the case leads," I replied. He gave me the look superiors reserve for when they think you're going off the rails. "This is a hit and run, not a psychiatric evaluation." "You have a car? You have a suspect? Close it." I kept my voice calm. "With respect, jefe, we don't have a suspect. We have a liar, and we have a victim who was blackmailed." "That's speculation," he snapped. "And we're not opening a larger fraud investigation on the word of a cyclist and your gut feelings. You're stretching this." I didn't answer, not because he was right, but because he was politically correct. Pamplona had elections coming. The Guardia Civil didn't need a messy case that might turn into a corruption scandal if the victim's blackmail was tied to the school board or a local official. "Focus on the accident," Ruiz ordered, "not the drama around it." When I walked out, Torres whispered, "Translation, they want it wrapped with a bow." "Yeah," I said, "but this bow has teeth." We pushed on anyway. Sometimes you solve cases in the comisaria. Sometimes you solve them quietly behind the official version. We met a digital analyst in the basement office. She looked exhausted, but handed me a folder thick enough to make my eyebrows rise. "I checked the activity logs for the Julian accounts," she said. "Inspector, these weren't created on a whim. Whoever built this identity has been curating it for months." She pointed to timestamps, metadata. Photos uploaded at random intervals to mimic a real person's life. Messages that sound like two different people talking but come from the same device. Consistent linguistic patterns masked with deliberate mistakes. This is crafted. I felt a cold line travel down my spine. Samuel hadn't invented a friend. He'd invented an alibi structure. A persona he could blame for anything. A persona he could hide behind. Torres frowned. "But why go that far? Why not just blame a real accomplice?" "Because real accomplices make mistakes," I said. "But imaginary ones only do what you tell them, and imaginary ones can't betray you." The case was turning into a psychological maze, and psychological mazes have a habit of pushing back. That night, as I walked to my car behind the comisaria, I noticed something off the glove compartment was open. Papers on the seat, nothing stolen, but something missing, my notebook. Only that. Not my gun, not my badge, not my wallet, just the notes on Samuel, on Ander, on Julian. Someone wanted to know how far I'd gotten. I scanned the parking lot empty except for a janitor dragging a trash bin. A chill settled into my bones. Navarra is safe, but every city has its shadows. Torres rushed out when I called him over. "Inspector, this is a threat." "No," I said. "Threats announce themselves." This was a warning. Someone was close enough to reach into my car. Someone who knew what they needed and left everything else untouched. I drove home in silence, replaying every angle of the day. I slept with one ear open. In the morning, we got another piece of the puzzle. Forensics on the victim's ransacked apartment. No foreign prints except one partial on a drawer handle. It didn't match the victim. It didn't match Samuel either. But handwriting analysis on a letter found in Anders' trash did match something. A document Samuel had signed at work 2 years earlier. The blackmail letter, written by the same man who claimed he barely knew the victim. "Inspector," Torres muttered. "He blackmailed the teacher, didn't he?" That's one possibility, I said. But why? Money? Revenge? Or maybe the friend was the one blackmailing him, Torres added sarcastically. I didn't smile. Maybe. Because the idea wasn't sarcastic anymore. We brought Samuel back in. This time, I led the questioning. You told us your friend uses your car, I began. Yes, and that he might have been driving the night Ander died. Correct, but there's something you forgot to tell us. He looked up, calm, as if waiting for a script cue. I slid a printed page toward him, the blackmail letter. Your handwriting, Samuel. He stared at it. Not shocked, just cornered. That's not mine, he said softly. It is, I replied. We confirmed it. No, it's his. Julian wrote that. His voice cracked on the name. Not fear, not guilt, confusion. You don't understand, he whispered. He needed money. He told me to help him. He said the teacher owed him something. Stop, I said sharply. There is no Julian. There never was. And for the first time, something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of panic or denial or both. You're lying, he said. He exists. I've talked to him. I've met him. Where? Silence. When? Silence. What does he look like? A tremor in his jaw. I can't describe him. Because he had no face. Because Samuel had never seen him. Because you can't see someone who doesn't exist. Back in my office, I listened to a voicemail the victim had left his brother days before his death. Static. Wind. And a shaking voice. I can't keep paying him. He knows too much. And he says he's not alone. He has someone helping him. Someone driving the car. Helping him. Someone driving the car. Someone who never existed outside of a desperate man's mind. There it was, the missing piece. Samuel had created Julian not only as an alibi, but as a partner. A partner he used to blackmail Ander. A partner to blame if things went wrong. A partner to separate himself from his own guilt. A second identity. A psychological escape hatch. Torres exhaled, long and low. So he blackmailed the teacher, then killed him, and now hides behind the imaginary friend who did it. Worse, I said, I think he believes the friend did it. And that was the major twist. We weren't chasing a killer and an accomplice. We were chasing one man running from himself. The cliffhanger came an hour later. A technician walked in with a new piece of evidence. A voice message extracted from a corrupted folder on Ander's phone. I pressed play. The victim's strained voice. Samuel, please, stop hiding behind him. I know it's you. I know he's not real. The room went silent. That message changed everything. Because now we knew the victim had figured it out. And that meant Samuel had a reason to silence him permanently. I closed my notebook, my new one, and stood. Let's finish this, I said. I asked for one more interview with Samuel. Not because I expected a confession men like him don't confess by accident. They confess when the world you build around them collapses, brick by brick, leaving no shadows left to hide in. I brought him into interrogation room 2. Small table, 2 chairs, a recorder, and the hum of the fluorescent lights that always seemed too loud. He looked tired this time, not physically, but in that deeper way. The kind of exhaustion that comes from maintaining 2 lives at once. Samuel, I began, we recovered a voice message from Ander. He addressed it to you. He tensed, but didn't speak. I pressed play. The recording spilled into the room. Ander's strained voice, the desperation, the trembling breath. Samuel, please, stop hiding behind him. I know it's you. I know he's not real. When it ended, Samuel closed his eyes as if bracing for impact. Do you know what this means? I asked. He didn't answer. It means Ander recognized who was blackmailing him. It means he knew you invented Julian. It means he knew the truth before he died. A long silence. Then he whispered, "You don't understand. I didn't want to be him. Be who?" Julian. His eyes opened, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something raw fear, guilt, confusion, all tangled together like fishing line. "I wasn't strong enough to face what I'd done," he said. "So I made someone who was." He rubbed his hands together compulsively. Julian wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. He was just supposed to carry the weight, the blame, the things I couldn't. Ander didn't deserve to carry it, I said. That struck him. I saw it in the flicker of pain across his face. "No," he whispered, "he didn't." I leaned forward. "Tell me what happened that night." He swallowed, throat tight. I went to talk to him. Just talk. I panicked. He yelled. I yelled. He said he'd expose everything, that he'd tell the police that Julian was a lie, and I didn't want to lose everything. "So you hit him." His voice was almost inaudible. I didn't mean to kill him. I let the sentence hang. Many killers say that. Few are lying. But intention doesn't resurrect the dead. And after you left him on the road, I said, you went back to his apartment. He nodded slowly. I thought he kept evidence there. Emails, screenshots, something. If I could destroy it, maybe I could survive this. But there was nothing left to save, was there? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The room felt colder. The fluorescent lights hummed louder. And the man sitting across from me no longer looked calm or controlled. He looked like someone who had built a second self just to avoid seeing who he really was. I pressed stop on the recorder. "Samuel Labiano, you are under arrest for the homicide of Ander Uriz and for multiple counts of extortion." He lowered his head into his hands. And for a moment, he looked like two people collapsing at once. The formal process took hours. Statements, paperwork, consultation with the prosecutor. My jefe didn't congratulate me, but he didn't try to bury the case either. Political pressure dissolves quickly when the evidence stacks neatly. Still, I felt no victory. Blackmail cases usually involve money, secrets, desperation. This one involved identity. A man splitting himself in two so he could commit crimes with one half and sleep with the other. When people lie long enough, the lie stops being a mask. It becomes a second skin. The next day, I visited Ander's brother. It's the part of the job that ages you, not the late nights or the crime scenes the people left behind. "I thought you should know," I told him. "We have the man responsible." He confessed. Iñaki nodded slowly. "Thank you, Inspector." He didn't ask for details. Most families don't want to hear them. What mattered was that the fog had cleared, even if the truth stung. Before leaving, he asked me one final question. Why would someone do this to him? I gave him the only honest answer I could. Because admitting your mistakes is harder than inventing someone to take the blame. He closed his eyes, absorbing it. Not satisfied, but accepting. That's the best justice can do sometimes. In the following weeks, the case wrapped up neatly on paper. Samuel's lawyer tried to argue diminished responsibility. The psychiatric evaluation confirmed he wasn't psychotic. He understood right from wrong. The Julian persona was a deliberate construction, not a hallucination, a strategy, a shield. A way to commit acts he couldn't tolerate seeing as his own. He was charged accordingly. A year from now, a judge will decide whether Julian earns him a lighter sentence. Personally, I doubt it. Judges in Navarra don't like elaborate lies. Neither do I. The psychological fallout came later, not for Samuel, for me. Cases like this crawl under your skin because they remind you of something you already know but don't like thinking about. Most people don't break all at once. They break in small pieces, quietly, over years. Samuel didn't wake up one day and invent a second identity. He built it slowly, detail by detail, until it became the place where he could dump every part of himself he didn't want to face. Anders saw through it, and paid with his life. Some nights, when I drive home on those same dark rural roads, I think about that. About how thin the line is between the person you pretend to be and the one you really are. And I think about Samuel standing there behind the police tape the night of the accident, expressionless, almost relieved, as if he was waiting for someone else to show up. Someone who never would. Someone who never existed. I still see that look sometimes. A man quietly asking a question he can't bear to voice. If I didn't do it, who did? I close the file in my drawer, but not in my head. Because some cases end with an arrest. This one ended with a mirror. And mirrors don't lie, even when people do.